Hey everybody, we're here at the Remnant. We have Kevin O Sullivan in the house. We're real excited to get some insights from Kevin O Sullivan. First of all, Kevin O Sullivan, a little bit of his background, a little bit of his bio. He's a retired police officer, and he was actually injured in the line of duty. So he's a true hero among us, and he's really humble, as you'll be able to see. He worked for the legislature for 3 years in Washington State, and then for the federal government, for a congresswoman named Jolene Unsoeld. Is that how you say that?
That's
now?
correct.
And she was on the other side of the aisle, but boy, they worked together and got some stuff done. What did you do as it was related to the FBI?
Well, my background is law enforcement, the congresswoman had me work on FBI cases, where constituents had problems with the FBI, or if they had problems with the postal inspectors, or immigration was a big one. I did a lot of immigration issues and et cetera. Brought people into the United States, and worked with constituents and et cetera, and solved problems, basically.
So you're a problem solver.
Yeah, problem solver. Right.
That's great. So after that, he bought a grocery store and was very successful in the grocery business. And I said, well, how did you get so successful? And he said, well, we just help people.
That's right. And, one of the things that you have to do when you're in business, you have to listen to what the customers want. And so you can't have stuff on the shelf that doesn't sell. You have to have things on the shelf that people want. And so I had a list every day and made sure that I had those things. And I took this store from about 700,000. It was doing about 750,000 when I bought it, to up around 5 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is success.
And it was so much fun.
It was so much fun because you had others as part of what you were doing. You were helping them. And that's one thing about, I could go on about free enterprise and the market, free market. Because in a free market, you have to understand what somebody else wants.
That's right.
You have to have outside, selfless focus, because if you can't help them with what they need at a reasonable price, you can't make a living.
That's exactly right.
And that's something I think that's been lost with some of the leftist ideas about greed and all this kind of stuff. In order to be a successful businessman, you have to have that heart for people. Like I was saying, I owned a music store back in the early 80s, and it wasn't about what I wanted or cared about. It's what they wanted and what they cared about.
That's right.
And so it's pretty much a selfless thing.
And also, Dave, you have to give it to him for a reasonable price. Like, for instance, when I took over the store, he was in a 39% pricing bucket. I brought it down to 28%.
Wow.
And I was taking a lot of risks.
Yeah.
But everything I've read and studied and et cetera, everything's about volume. And if you don't sell a volume, you're not going to get the money that you need to make. So that's what I did.
More happy people.
Yeah.
Also, you bought the grocery store, and then you ran for county assessor, and you won. What was that about?
Well, I had so many people coming in, and I had the store for 10 years at that point, and I had so many people coming in complaining about their property taxes.
Yeah.
And I kept hearing it every day, every time the e-valves would go out. And there was a lot of waterfront on Steamboat Island, but that wasn't the case. It was all the inconsistencies on the evaluation of the properties.
Right.
And even though I was not an appraiser, but I was a businessman, and it didn't make sense. Everybody needs to be treated the same under the RCWs.
Right.
And it wasn't. And so that's
why
I ran.
Yeah, so you saw a problem, and you ran, and you did your best to fix that problem.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. So
And
we need more people like that in our culture, amen?
Yeah.
All right, so you bought the grocery store, ran for assessor, and also we'll get through this. See, it's such a long list. We'll get to our subject matter in just a minute. It's just amazing some of the things that this Kevin O'Sullivan's done. County commissioner, and also tell us a little bit about, that was assessor, so tell us a little bit about the commissioner. You were county commissioner, right?
Yes, and one of the things
So you went from assessor to commissioner.
That's correct.
Okay.
And one of the things that I found, there was this massive deficiency in the sheriff's office and in the prosecutor's office as well. And when you're, and I really related to this, when you're out there by yourself in a patrol car and you all of a sudden have something go haywire and you're in a fight for your life, and you call for help and it takes 10 minutes to get help, I mean, that's what happened to me. So I didn't want that to happen to our deputies.
So that's how you got hurt in the line of duty, is
Yeah.
that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Wow, that's,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's a personal thing, and it's a societal thing, and it's a cultural thing within the police department.
Right, and they also have a calculation for 1,000 population. There's 10,000. You know how many deputies within 10,000, and et cetera. And we were far below that. And currently, to this day, we're 39 out of 39 counties. We are the lowest.
Wow.
Lewis County has more deputies than we do. You know what I mean, as far as the ratio is concerned.
And how is the morale among the deputies?
Well, it's tough.
Yeah.
You know, these guys are out there by themselves, and they're, you know, when they call for help, a lot of the cities, which I'm very thankful for, and the city of Everett came to my defense, and that, you know, everybody responds, everybody tries to work as a team, and et cetera. But they need more deputies, and quite frankly, the sheriff Sanders is doing a good job right now. He's really filling some new deputies in there, and et cetera. And the commissioners, I think with the makeup of the commissioners right now, he's got some help there.
Yeah.
And so,
Do you think the overall attitude about the police department has changed since the whole George Floyd riots across the nation, the defunding the police and all that kind of thing? Has that affected the police officers?
oh, of course it has. Yeah, the defunding, we had it here. We had it here in Thurston County about defunding. And we also, because of the defunding talk and the rhetoric, there's been some like for instance, Thurston County Socialist Party now is there, the Green Party, and all these, and quite frankly, they are serious fringe party people, you know. And
Yeah.
then you also have a chapter of Antifa and BLM here in Thurston County now.
Yeah, well, I think that's where we were getting to, because you made a comment when you were here the other day about Antifa and building a cell here in Olympia. We're in Tumwater right now, but in Olympia. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think this is very, very key. And for people to know across the board, Democrats, Republicans, everyone, I'm not sure that the average person in Thurston County or Washington State thinks it's a great idea to have Antifa doing things they're kind of doing. So give us a little bit of insight of what you know what's happening.
Well, you know, I'm really protective of the community to this day.
Yeah.
And one of the things when I started to realize that Antifa was starting a chapter here, and that was through Evergreen State College. And Zita, who was the port commissioner, she was probably the kingpin in Evergreen to help recruit people and et cetera, and then use them in demonstrations. And they dress all in black. We've actually have shootings down here in Olympia now, you know, where Antifa was involved, and the Prayer Boys or whatever.
Pride.
Yeah, forget. I don't know whose side they're on.
They're right.
Yeah. Well,
Proud Boys.
I don't know. I
No?
think there's people that call themselves that, and they're not. They're on the left.
Oh,
So there's a lot of manipulation there. But we've had fires in downtown Olympia. We had a gentleman who was building a 3-story right on Capitol Way, and it was a beautiful building. It's right next door to Ziegler's, and somebody went over there and torched the place. It was a 2 or 3 alarm fire, and this was all Antifa-based protocols, you know. Break windows, like for instance Starbucks that was down there on Capitol Way. Everybody loves Starbucks, you know, whether I go there or not, but it's free enterprise. And they would go over there and break tens of thousands of dollars worth of windows and run them out of business. And they did. They ran Starbucks out of Olympia, out of that particular site, and it was wrong.
Yeah, just absolutely. So you were talking about Planned Parenthood.
Yes.
And their affiliation here. I think that's really important for the broad number of people in our culture to understand what's going on there. So help us understand a little bit how they fit into the mix with Antifa and this kind of leftist organizations.
Well, I'll tell you how I got involved. Now, I'm Roman Catholic, and I go to the Byzantine Church out on Yelm Highway, and we put together a prayer group to go down in front of Planned Parenthood and pray for the unborn. We just cross the street. We don't interfere with anybody. We just pray the rosary, or pray some prayers. And also, we also went down there with Church in the Woods and et cetera. So other churches that are participating in that. But we're non-confrontational. We don't want to have any problems, and we're just there to pray for the unborn. That's the deal. Well, I wasn't part of this one group that went down there from St. Mike's, but they went down there and they were praying for the unborn just across the street and et cetera. And a van come pulling up full of Antifa people. And it came from Evergreen State College. And a professor got out and started to scream and yell, and they were spitting on people and
Literally spitting on people.
Yes, yeah. Which is considered an assault,
Legally?
Yes, legally, that's considered an assault. But there was just trying to, and a lot of these people were like in their late 70s and et cetera, that were praying. And so, of course, they were intimidated, and et cetera. And so now they don't want to ever go back there again. And so they're just praying for the unborn. And so there's nothing wrong with that,
Yeah.
And so, then that's where I started to really focus in on Antifa. And what's their core cell? What are they doing? Well, this just happened, I think 2-3 weeks ago, whenever I told you, Dave. They had a table out in front of Planned Parenthood, and they had Antifa people up there signing up for something. And I didn't have a person in there to know for sure, but they were definitely Antifa people, and Planned Parenthood was facilitating a sign-up party or whatever, sign-up table. And so there's a cell, and they want to, it's like the Antifa is this radical group that goes around and intimidates, like for instance, last year, I think it was the Art Walk in downtown Olympia.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, they had the kids had a parade or whatever, and I was told, I even got pictures of it because somebody took pictures of it for me. And Antifa shows up, and they start out throwing fireworks at people and et cetera. And of course, everybody like disperses and goes home and et cetera. There's nothing in the newspaper. There wasn't a police response. They just accepted the terrorism, and it's wrong. And you cannot keep our community safe with that kind of activity.
Right. Do you see it accelerating?
Yes.
And do you think that's a lot because the Olympian, is it still in business?
No.
Even? They're not in business at all.
Well, what little business they get out of there, like when I was involved in the removal of that violent sexual predator house in Tenino, I was very involved in that.
Yeah.
We could not get the Olympian involved. They would not even pick up the phone and call back or anything else like that. I even called the TNT or the Tacoma Tribune because that's who's kind of in charge of the Olympian now.
Right.
And they were just not. You know who got involved?
Who's that?
Centralia Chronicle.
Really?
Yeah, and the Nisqually Valley News. Chad Taylor is amazing. You go to him with a problem in the community, he shows up. Matter of fact, he's the editor. He's the owner of the paper. And when I called Chad, he showed up in Tenino on a Sunday night at 8 o'clock, and he brought his reporting team with him and et cetera, and taped it and said, "I've got this, Kevin. I'm gonna do this." And he got it so it was in the statewide newspapers in Seattle. It got into the Seattle Times. It got on the networks and et cetera.
Yeah.
And then everybody heard about it. And of course, the pressure from the governor's office of putting violent sexual predators where there's reports written about them that they will offend again. And to put them in the middle of a community next to a bus stop, I mean, was this crazy?
It was literally next to a bus stop,
Yes.
wasn't it? 'Cause I saw some of the pictures.
And there was a man-made lake, and that Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts used it during the summer, and it was like right there. It was like a meat market for these guys, And so they were willing to put these guys in these houses that are violent sexual predators. And now,
And what island did they come from? Which one was it?
McNeil Island, they
McNeil,
have
yeah.
a unit there, and so they can't escape. But these guys are the worst of the worst of the worst. Now, one of the things happened to me when I was county commissioner. They were going to put a guy in out on Boston Harbor Road. It was Gary Locke. He was going to put him in this house, and his name was Mitchell Gaff. And Mitchell Gaff was from Everett. Now, I was familiar with Mitchell Gaff because that's where I was a police officer up there. And he was a bad, bad dude. He tied kids up in piano wire and then torture them and et cetera. He was a very violent offender. They were going to put him out there on Boston Harbor across the street from a daycare. And once I got called by the community out there in Boston Harbor saying that they were going to do this. And I told Gary Locke, I said, no, you're not. You're not going to put these people. I will stop you. And I did.
How did you do that? Can you tell us a little bit of the story?
I used the Board of Health. And the Board of Health is the most powerful part of the county commission. And to put Mitchell Gap in the community there was a public safety risk, and et cetera.
Yeah.
And so I had an ordinance starting to draft up by the prosecutor's office, and we were going to implement that. But the governor pulled them out of the house. Now, the story gets a little bit more interesting. Recently, during this house thing in Tenino, which was a year ago now, or a few months ago, they put Mitchell Gaff in the city of Olympia. Now, Mitchell Gaff was walking around, and I heard that he was walking around. So I called the Olympia Police Department to inform them how bad this guy really is, right? Well, due to the incredible work of the Everett Police Department, they kept the DNA of a victim that happened in Everett. And I remember they found her down on Broadway, tied up. You know, this guy likes to tie people up and torture them. And they found out had his DNA on the victim, and the Everett Police Department came down and arrested him for murder. And so this guy was walking around the city streets of Olympia. I just cannot believe it. Jay Inslee has made such a horrible mistake, and Bob Ferguson, of allowing this stuff to happen.
Yeah.
It's a threat to the community.
Well, and I heard, you may know more about this than I do, but I heard the prosecutors, we just don't have enough prosecutors, and that people are coming in there that are just felons and they're murderers and rapists and all this stuff, and basically they're being let to go home because there's no prosecutor there to do it. And what I was hearing was that in Washington State, prosecutors don't want to work here. There's better states with more money, and they don't pay them enough. And so this is have you heard about this kind of a problem?
Well, when I was county commissioner, our prosecutors were severely underpaid.
So that was what the commentator I was listening to was talking about. Way underpaid.
Yeah, way underpaid. So I went to the prosecutors. I said, look, I don't know if you guys have ever thought about this, but I think you need to unionize. And the reason why, you need to negotiate these contracts. Now, I'll fight for you, but I'm going to leave someday. And when I'm gone, you know, you need something there in place that will guarantee you a decent wage and et cetera. So I got their wages way up when I was there. And they started a bargaining unit, and they continued that. Now, our guys aren't severely underpaid now, you know, because they got their wages way up. However, though, they don't have enough. You know,
do they feel supported by the system?
You know, honestly, I haven't talked to John Tuheim in a long time. So
now, who's John Tuheim?
Oh, he's the county prosecutor.
Okay.
Now, I know Ed Holm, and I worked with Ed Holm very closely, and Ed was 100% supportive of his people and et cetera, and he fought for their wages, and he fought for them. I don't know about John Tuheim. I don't know what's going on right now. I do know that they don't have enough prosecutors.
Right. And that's what this whole thing was about. There's just not enough of them. and it's causing a big problem. And how do you foresee, if Bob Ferguson gets in, things going for our state?
He's a wild card. He is just a wild card. He's not, he tends to roll over a lot of people. Like, for instance, the violent sexual predators. He did nothing. He did nothing to stop this craziness of putting them back in the community, like Mitchell Gaff, who was a murderer. You know, he did nothing to stop that. He's part of that dysfunctional thinking. And for some reason, the safety of the public is not a concern of these people. And it kind of blows me away. Now, we're very lucky to have the sheriff we have, Sanders, and of course, Gary Edwards, who's a county commissioner, and even Wayne Fournier. And Mejia. I mean, they're big into safety, you know, and so they are promoting safety, but to ignore and allow, like, for instance, let me tell you about this. This is part of my research, as I did, is, you know, I wanted to find out who was behind allowing these people to come out of McNeil Island. And I found that Supreme Living out here on Martin Way.
Right.
Okay. Well, the person who runs that used to work for the caucus, the Democratic caucus. And she's always had these jobs, and she actually got fired back in Oklahoma because of violent sexual predators she let out. You know, she was part of letting them out there, and they went out and offended, and of course she got fired. Now they stepped forward and did that. Well, now Supreme Living, she is making a fortune with these houses. Like, for instance, the one in Tenino was going to be allocated $1 million a year to take care of these guys.
And how many facilitators are in each house?
There was just one or two.
So they have a house, 2,500 square feet. How many residents in there from McNeil?
Well, they wanted to put 5 in there. They wanted to put
5 residents.
Violent sexual predators in Tenino.
So 5 violent sex predators.
Yeah.
With 2 or 3 facilitators.
Right.
For
With
$1 million a year.
$1 million a year. It's a money. It's
They
a
say
money.
follow the money.
Follow the money.
the money.
And it's and I've also heard Senator Frazier passed some legislation. She wanted to turn McNeil Island into a nature preserve and build some houses on it. Of course, you know, their houses, and so I think that's one of the things they want to do is remove all that, and then they can have the island to commercialize it. Their commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you mean by their commercial?
A group of Democratic people that believe that they're part of the elite system.
Yeah.
You know.
Develop an island unto themselves.
Yeah.
And just, man alive. Okay, well, that's exciting stuff.
Yeah.
What else do we have to talk about here? Any other thoughts that you might have about what we can do about it? What do you think the solutions are that we have? We're in election year. It's extremely volatile right now. And we have a lot of people that are upset on both sides. We're polarized as a nation. What do you feel we can do? Where do we start to come back as a nation? I know some people are saying we're gone, we're done, it's over. I am an eternal optimist.
Yeah.
Because I always know that there's always a way. I mean, I grew up still in the era where we had, number one, we had heroes, and heroes did heroic things, and heroes had terrible odds against them. And the heroes of my day got over those things. And I think we have a different culture today. We've grown up, a lot of kids have grown up in the feelings culture, to where it's about how they feel over what's real. So there's not much insight in that. We heard from the World Economic Forum that we will have nothing and like it. You know, we're hearing things like this with Yuri Noah Harari and those kind of folks at the very top. So I don't want to go too far up there, but what can we do locally, and how can we work to move forward and get this information out? Because I know that there's the extreme left that's very, very difficult to talk to about these kind of things. But there's got to be a common sense middle that people would just basically say, no way. And I think we really kind of saw that with the initiatives that we brought out and Brian Haywood funded, and
he's
what,
amazing.
1.2 million?
Amazing.
Yeah, 1.2 million people in this state. And actually, it was more Democrats than Republicans that signed
that's
them.
right.
I forgot the numbers, but it was, yeah, I have a picture of it on my phone. I don't know exactly, but actually more. So we have to understand, righteousness will always prevail unless righteousness doesn't rise up against the unrighteous.
Well, I feel, first of all, we have to get back to proper law enforcement. And we need to support the law enforcement community to enforce the laws. For instance, you know, when I was walking around the lake and we had the homeless problem around the lake and et cetera, I watched people shoot up heroin. I've seen more drug dealing in my life walking around the lake.
Yeah.
You know, they completely unraveled. People were making millions of dollars off of these and creating victims
Yeah.
and creating more homeless. So we have to get back to the enforcement side. We have to make the stuff that's illegal, we need to keep as illegal. You know, you assault somebody, you go to jail. You know, you just don't get out the same day. You know, you need to have a cool down. But you need to be accountable. We need to get accountability back in the system.
Yes.
And we're missing that.
So the difference between the two proposed governors, between Reichert and Ferguson, what do you think is the main difference between Reichert and Ferguson?
Well, I've had the honor of knowing Dave Reichert for a fair amount of time, you know, because when I was a police officer, we had the Green River going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you were during that time.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I used to get memos from Dave. Now, I didn't know Dave at the time, but I knew his name, and I knew this guy was on top of it. This guy, every time there was a tip or anything else, Dave had a memo out, and it went out to everybody in the state, all the police departments, sheriff's offices in the state. So everybody knew the same thing that Dave was thinking. And so this guy was a real team player. And so then I had the honor of having lunch with him. I think a couple of times now. I was chair of the state Special Olympics.
Oh, okay.
And so I was there with the law enforcement torch run and et cetera. And so Dave was at the table and et cetera. And the guy was just solid as a rock. You know exactly where you stand. And he was very successful and got the Green River murderer.
Yeah,
He never
did it.
stopped. He never stopped. It's that kind of tenacity and that incredible goodwill of trying to protect the community.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's a huge difference between Bob Ferguson, who's a party hack, I believe. Maybe that's a little bit too strong, but maybe that's how I feel.
We have tough people listening.
Yeah, maybe that's how I feel.
Just how you feel.
And a solid, true blue guy that's going to go in there and really govern
Yeah.
and bring safety to the community, bring stability to the community, stop this overzealous spending on climate change that everybody knows it's a hoax, you know, that doesn't really have any substance to it, you know?
Yeah. Not to go down that road so far, but the whole climate thing really affected me personally when I was a kid in high school in the Bay Area in California, because I believed it. And what they were saying was we were going to have an ice age.
Right.
So I was frightened by this ice age. I didn't want to stay down there. I moved back to Wairika, California, and got a cabin out in the woods so I could weather it out. You know, I had 2 creeks. We had fish. We had deer. We had bear. I could have lived there for everywhere until I realized one day these guys are lying. This is not going to happen.
Right.
And then I came back out. And I looking around and asking people what, you know, if they were as frightened as I was by this. And they said, well, it's all true. And most of the people that I knew were believing this whole climate thing.
Right.
And then it wasn't that. Then it was global warming. Then it was, so I don't want to go deep into that whole thing. It's hard for me to believe that people continue to believe something. And what's interesting, because I'm a pastor and I'm on the religious side of things, they will believe in stuff that's completely unvetted. They say it's the science, but when you ask the actual scientists, if you actually read the stuff, it's really not there.
Right.
I did a big, I think, 6-week thing on a series on all this kind of stuff. So we have less than a degree of movement. And that's what all this is about. $100 trillion for less than a degree in climate change. And then it moves back. I don't know about you, but I can tell, because I still have my senses, this is a very cold summer. This isn't warming.
No.
But then they turned it into change. And people buy this stuff. They don't want to believe in God, which has been in the history of the world forever, but they want to believe this hoax. It's just amazing to me, because it gets everybody all excited and stuff like that.
See, Dave, nothing good comes out of fear.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Well, and what did the Germans figure out? The Germans in Nazi Germany did all those crazy tests on people. Remember, we heard about all those for years. They did these crazy tests, and they figured out that if a person is frightened for a certain period of time,
That's right.
and if they're told the same thing over and over and over, they will never unlearn it.
Yeah.
It'll never get out of their soul. So that's why we see people, and we'll see people for the rest of our lives with masks on, with distancing 6 feet, and all the different things that happened during the whole COVID thing.
Yeah, which there was no science to support it. It was
None.
just all there. And then you had Bob Ferguson out there shutting down restaurants and, down in Lewis County and going after business owners and trying to destroy them. There was down in Cowlitz County as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, we don't need a governor like that. No. we need Dave Reichert to bring stability back to the state of Washington.
Yeah. Well, I haven't known Dave Reichert like you have. I did meet him at Kelly and Brad Payne's house when he did a fundraiser there. And right in their living room, it was absolutely wonderful. We just sat and listened to him for almost an hour. And I have never seen, if you call it a politician, I guess I wouldn't really call him one, because I think he's doing a job that he just needs to do. I never saw such transparency. He talked about not only what he wanted to do was great, but he also talked about the things that his deficits in life. He said he had ADD, and he would actually pray to pass every test that he had. He had a real hard time. He was very smart, but a lot of people with ADD just can't read very well, and they can't retain all their information. I mean, I've struggled with that in my lifetime. It was like listening to my life story. There was like not a dry eye in the place. He was so transparent and so honest about the things. He didn't have to tell us about that. He could have just been Mr. Superman, because he kind of looks like Superman. You know what I mean? He could have told us all the good stuff, but he said, no, I'm not perfect. I've got these deficits, and I've worked through things in my life to get where I am. So that kind of transparency, that's what I think America needs, is that kind of transparent person that's going to get up there and just do the right thing as far as the people around him. Like we're talking about business, you can't be in business if you're thinking about yourself. You've got to think about others, and that's what we have to demand from those public officials that we elect.
That's right. That's exactly right. We have to put people in office that are going to have the mindset of helping the public, not helping themselves.
Exactly. And that's what we see. I saw a list of presidents that went into office with so much money and came out with so much. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
The
millions. 80, 100 million,
Where does $100 million does not come from speeches?
Yeah, right.
Call me wrong. Okay, we can get on all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I totally
Well, see, that's
agree.
where the global warming stuff comes in. All it is a money push.
Yeah.
It's all about money. And it's about taking your money and taking it out of your pocket and putting it in my pocket.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's the way it is.
Every time I hear a politician on TV, just like we saw in the debates, we have one of the politicians sitting up there, might have been the female one, but when they say they're going to give us money, my first thought is, because I'm a businessman since I was 11, whose money is that?
Whose money it is? It's our money.
So I've got to give you money to give them money?
Yeah.
And the whole thing, yeah, we can go down a lot of rabbit trails, but
Yeah, we could do another show.
and we probably will. So we'll probably end right here. What do you think?
Okay, sir.
All right. Well, God bless you all. This has
Thank you.
been a great time with Kevin O Sullivan. Answered a lot of questions. We really need to pray about the Antifa cells that are growing downtown. We need to pray about what's going on, and we need to pray that the church gets involved. Right now, I don't have the exact numbers, but a lot of the people on the conservative side of things have bowed out of the system. And we literally relegated our culture and our country to people that do not believe like us at all. In fact, they believe the complete opposite. I don't know what it would be like to be the kind of person that would want to start a sexual predator house by a park and a bus stop. I have no idea even how that works. But we need to begin to pray. We need to begin to believe that we will, as a Christian church, rise up in America before it's too late. So God bless you all.